Is it just me, or is it kind of crazy how these tech giants and, like, political bigwigs are all buddy-buddy now?
Yeah, it's definitely,
I mean, remember, like, just a few years ago when
it raises some eyebrows.
Zuckerberg and Trump were at each other's throats.
For sure, especially with how much power these, tech leaders have over all our lives. Like, it's everything from what we see online to, like, the actual policies that are shaping the whole digital world,
And that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today. This whole thing with Mark Zuckerberg and President-elect Trump and how their, relationship could totally reshape tech policy. We're going to try to unpack, like, what's motivating this whole, like, kind of sudden shift.
Yeah.
Explore what could happen.
Yeah.
And hopefully get everyone thinking about what it all means, for all of us.
And it's not just about these two, know? This is a trend. We're seeing more and more tech leaders stepping into the political world.
Oh, for sure.
Like Elon Musk advising Trump, Zuckerberg wanting to be more involved in policy debates. It's fascinating, could have some huge implications down the road.
It really could. So remember, like, the whole Zuckerberg-Trump public feud, threats, account suspensions, the whole 9 yards. It was a whole different story just a few years back.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There was a ton of animosity back then. A lot of it came from Trump saying Facebook was biased against conservatives, and then the fallout from that whole January 6th thing.
Yeah.
It was a really big deal. Put Facebook right in the political spotlight.
And now we see Zuckerberg kind of like doing an Elon Musk and getting cozy with the new administration. Big change, don't you think?
Yeah, it's a shift for sure. What I find interesting is it seems like this new attitude comes right as Zuckerberg is getting more interested in influencing tech policy.
Right. Nick Clegg, Meta's president of global affairs, said that Zuckerberg is very keen to play an active role in shaping tech policy, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence. Like, he realized if you want to, control the game, you got to be on the field. You can't just watch from the sidelines.
Makes sense strategically. With people like Elon Musk already close with Trump, Zuckerberg probably feels like he needs to be in the room to make sure Meta's interests are being considered.
But it's not just about being in the room, it's what you do when you're there. And that's where things get even more interesting, right?
Exactly. We have to ask, like, what's Zuckerberg hoping to accomplish? What kind of policies is he likely to push for? And how is all this going to affect the average person online?
Exactly. We know Zuckerberg has been focused on things like net neutrality and data privacy, but his recent focus on AI, it feels like that's his top priority now.
And AI is such a powerful area to focus on. It has implications for everything: national security, how competitive our economy is, even just the, like, basic fabric of our online lives, Even small policy changes with AI could have huge effects everywhere.
So what does that shift toward AI tell us about Zuckerberg's big picture, his overall agenda? Is this all about making sure Meta comes out on top, or is he thinking bigger about how to use AI to solve global problems?
That's a big question. And I think, honestly, it's too early to say for sure. What we can do is look at what he's done, what he's saying now, and the whole context of how the tech industry and politics are interacting to try to, like, connect the dots.
And one of those dots has to be Zuckerberg's admission that Meta censored certain COVID-19 content back in 2021 because the Biden administration was pressuring them.
Yeah, that was a pretty big admission. He said he regretted not pushing back more on that, even though it was coming from the political party he's usually aligned with.
Exactly. And he said he's going to resist those kinds of demands going forward, no matter who's in power. But how realistic is that, really? Can he really stand up to a powerful administration like Trump's, especially if they agree on stuff like AI?
That's where it gets real. We'll have to see if he actually does what he's saying he'll do, or if, politics wins out in the end.
Okay, so we've been talking about what Zuckerberg is doing now, but to really understand this change, we need to look back a bit. It wasn't always fancy dinners and agreeing on American tech dominance, right? Let's rewind and look at that whole, like, messy history between Zuckerberg and Trump.
Yeah, for sure. It's easy to forget how, like, heated things got between those two a few years back.
Oh, yeah.
Trump was constantly saying that Facebook was biased against conservatives.
Oh, constantly.
Even suggested they were, like, working against him in his presidency.
It was like all the time. Remember those tweets where he just go off about Facebook censoring conservatives?
Oh, yeah.
Felt like it was every other day there was something new.
And it wasn't just talk. The Trump administration actually started looking into Facebook for, antitrust violations and stuff.
Yeah.
He even considered getting rid of Section 230, that law that protects platforms from lawsuits over, like, what users post.
Oh, yeah.
Big stuff.
Right, and this was all happening while that Cambridge Analytica scandal was blowing up.
Oh, right.
which really put Facebook under a microscope.
That was huge. That whole thing exposed how personal data from millions of Facebook users got taken without them knowing.
Right.
And it was allegedly used to target them with political ads in 2016.
Yeah.
That really messed up the trust between Zuckerberg and Trump and made a lot more people say social media needed more regulation.
It's kind of ironic when you think about it. Trump used Twitter to, skip over traditional media and go straight to his supporters.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he was attacking the very platforms that helped him get there.
It shows you how complicated this whole relationship is between politicians and these big tech companies.
Yeah.
On the one hand, they know social media can completely shape what people think and sway elections, but then they also see it as this threat to their own control and their agendas.
And don't forget, it wasn't just Trump coming down on Zuckerberg.
Oh.
Democrats were criticizing Facebook, too,
Yeah.
saying they weren't doing enough about hate speech and all the misinformation going around.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg was stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Totally. It was a political tug of war, both sides pulling him in different directions.
Yeah.
Which brings us back to him admitting that Meta censored some COVID stuff because of the Biden administration.
Right.
Seems like he's learned from what happened and is more willing to, hold his ground now.
It's interesting. If you look at how Zuckerberg was handling things back then compared to now,
Yeah.
it's almost like he's changed his whole strategy.
Yeah.
He's gone from being reactive, always on defense, to being more proactive and strategic in how he deals with politics.
I think you're right. Before, it felt like he was always trying to catch up, defend Facebook from all this criticism.
Yeah.
Now it feels like he's more focused on controlling the narrative, setting the agenda, and he's trying to influence policy in a way that fits with his vision for tech.
Which brings us to the big question. What is that vision? We know AI is a big deal for him, but what's the end goal? Is it all about Meta being on top? Or does he really think he can steer AI in a way that helps everyone?
It's tough to say for sure, but I think it's probably a little bit of both.
Right.
He's a businessman, so of course he wants Meta to be successful.
Yeah.
But he's also talked about how AI could be used to solve some of the world's biggest problems, like climate change or healthcare.
Right, but there's also that whole other side of AI that could be really bad. We're already seeing it used for surveillance and to make those deepfakes. Even to develop weapon systems that can operate on their own. It's a really powerful technology. Could be used for good or for really bad things.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations. We need to be paying attention to the people who are developing AI, their motivations,
Right.
And we need to make sure there are safeguards so AI isn't misused.
And when you have someone like Zuckerberg, who's so close to an administration like Trump's, the stakes are even higher.
For sure.
What kind of world are we building if we let a few tech billionaires and politicians control the future of AI?
That's a question that goes beyond just Zuckerberg and Trump.
Yeah.
It's a question for all of us.
Yeah.
We all need to be involved, demanding transparency and accountability,
Right.
and making sure ethics are considered when AI is being developed and used.
We started this whole deep dive focused on how things were changing between Zuckerberg and Trump, but this conversation has really made me think bigger.
I agree. It's so much bigger than just two people.
Yeah.
It's about the power of technology, the responsibility that comes with it, and the choices we make as a society about how we use it.
We've gone from this personal beef between these two guys to this huge conversation about the future of technology and who gets to decide what it looks like. Kind of blows your mind.
It really does. And it shows why it's so important to, stay informed and be part of these discussions, because the choices we make now about AI and data privacy and all that, they're going to have a ripple effect for years to come. It's going to determine what the internet looks like for us and for future generations.
Okay, so we've talked about the past, the present. What about the future? What could happen with Zuckerberg calling the shots on tech policy with the Trump administration?
Well, one possibility is that we see a lot less regulation, which could be good for companies like Meta, at least in the short term.
Right.
Trump's not really a fan of the government getting too involved, He might be okay with giving tech companies more freedom to experiment and innovate.
But wouldn't that worry people about data privacy and all that? If no one's really watching, couldn't companies just take our data and use it however they want without us knowing?
Yeah, that's a real concern. Privacy groups are already worried about that. They say we need strong rules to make sure companies are responsible with our data.
But then there's the whole argument that too much regulation could stifle innovation, slow everything down. You know, it's tough to find that right balance.
It is, and that debate is going to be going on for a while, I think. Another thing that could happen is we see this more nationalistic approach to tech policy. Like everything's about making sure America's #1 in AI.
Clegg was talking about how Zuckerberg wants America to stay on top in tech. So it wouldn't be surprising if he starts pushing for policies that really help AI development in the US.
Exactly. And that could lead to more competition with other countries, especially China. They're putting a ton of money into AI too. It could even turn into a tech arms race with everyone trying to be better than everyone else.
And what about the whole ethical side of this? We've been saying AI can be used for good or bad.
Right.
How do we make sure people develop it responsibly?
That's the big question, and I don't know if anyone really has the answer yet. It's going to take governments, tech companies, researchers, ethicists, everyone working together to figure out how to do AI the right way. We need to be having those conversations now, before it's too late.
I think you're totally right. This isn't something we can just sit back and watch. We all have a part to play in figuring out what technology looks like in the future. We need to be informed, get involved, and make sure the people in charge are accountable.
Absolutely. We need to ask tough questions, demand transparency, and push for policies that put ethics and people's well-being first.
So we started this deep dive looking at how things were changing between Zuckerberg and Trump, but we ended up talking about so much more.
Yeah, it's a big topic.
It really is. It makes you think. There are definitely some risks, but there's also a lot of potential for things to go well. The important thing is to stay informed, get involved, and make your voice heard.
I totally agree. The future isn't set in stone. We're all building it together with the choices we make, the things we do, and the things we demand.
Well said. And on that note, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you learned something, thought about some things, maybe even had some good debates. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.